Hey class, welcome to chapter 15, section 1. We're looking at kind of the strengths and strategies of the Civil War. Little strengths of both the North and the South, their weaknesses, and their strategies for winning the war. Let's start off with some basic information here. First of all, of course, this is the Union. The Union is the North. President Lincoln is in charge of the North, the Union. The capital of the North is in Washington, D.C., right up here on the map. The primary general is Ulysses S. Grant for the North. Here is the American flag, which is the flag for the North. And they are, of course, going up against the Confederacy. The Confederacy is led by their president, Jefferson Davis. The Confederates are the South. They're in the South. Their capital, as you see pictured here, is in Richmond, Virginia, not too far from Washington, D.C. Their primary general and leader is General Robert E. Lee, considered the greatest military mind of the Civil War. Their flag, you see pictured back here, the other side, the North versus South, Union versus Confederacy, Lincoln versus Davis, Grant versus Lee, with the two capitals not being very far from each other. But let's start off by looking at the strengths and weaknesses of the as they head into war. First of all, the North, the Union, has by far the larger population. So many immigrants coming into the North, they're flooded with people is one of the positives. They also have a lot more industry, meaning that they can make their equipment easier. They can manufacture key products. They can manufacture their weapons and instruments on their own. They have railway systems. We saw that in a lesson or two ago that really linked the North and the West together, making it easy to transport goods and supplies. They had a far superior navy. Remember, the New England states were known for their shipbuilding, for their navy yards. So important. More ships, important for buying and selling goods with other nations. So many resources. Steels, metals, all of those things. A better banking system. Why is that important? It's better for borrowing money, for reinvesting money. It's going to help them out. And they have the leadership of Lincoln. Lincoln is a calm, humble, strong leader during this time. The North has a lot of advantages, but they do have a couple of negatives. One is they're fighting on unfamiliar territory. All of their battles are kind of like a road game. They're fighting against somebody on their home turf, certainly a disadvantage. And they're fighting, of course, against the South, and it is a hostile environment. The Southerners hate them coming down there, and they're pretty ticked off about it. Nearly all of the fighting is going to take place in the South. The Confederacy, the South, also has its share of pros and cons. The South, some of their positives were they had home field advantage. They knew the land. They knew the terrain they were fighting on. Also, a lot of strong support from the white population in the South. In the North, not everybody was for the war. They kind of thought, why are we doing this? Well, in the South, the support was a very high percentage. They also had superior military leadership. Men like Robert E. Lee, Stonewall Jackson. They had better military minds in the South. Then lastly, the cause they're fighting for. They're fighting for their way of life. They're fighting for their livelihood. Slaves, agriculture, farming was how they made all of their money. And without the slaves, that opportunity was going to go. And so they're really fighting for their way of life, their culture. Where the North, they're just fighting for keeping the Union together. It's different causes. But they have a number of negatives in the South. One is smaller population, less men to draw from for the war. Very few factories. If they want to get equipment, they've got to really trade for the equipment. They produced less than half of the amount of food produced in the North. The North, of course, includes the West, which is places like Ohio, Michigan, Indiana, and they have a lot of good farmland there. They also have less than half the railroads and trains. Even though the South is actually more territory, they have less railroads. And then, kind of ironically, number 5, As we know, they're all strong states' rightsers. That's what we're fighting for, is states' rights. And so because of that, they have a hard time kind of willingly giving all the authority to the new Confederate government. They're leery of a strong national government. They want to keep their rights to themselves. So it's going to be a negative for them in the unifying cause. So both sides have strengths, weaknesses. They also have a kind of a mission statement of what they're going to do to win successful. The North had three primary goals. First of all, to blockade and close the southern ports to prevent the South from importing or exporting. All of these ships along the South are northern ships. They are put in place here to prevent Britain and France from bringing supplies to help them. Remember, they can't make as many supplies because they're farmers. They don't have the factories. So by placing these ships along here, they create a blockade, preventing the South from getting supplies. Number two, they want to gain control of the Mississippi River. If the North can gain control of the Mississippi River, that prevents Arkansas, Texas, Louisiana, Missouri from bringing supplies and bringing men to help. So they're going to cut them off. We're going to call this the anaconda, right? Here we see this cartoon here of this huge anaconda or this blockade around. And what do anacondas do? They squeeze together. They're going to slowly make this circle tighter and tighter and tighter until the South is totally under submission of the North. And then a third goal is to capture the capital. Here is Richmond right here. They want to capture the capital. The North believes that if they can do those things, they can be successful and defeat the South. Some of the Southern goals, one was defend the homeland. Let's wear these guys out. Let's wear down the North. We're fighting on our home territory. We have home field advantage. Let's wear them out. Secondly, they expected France and England to come and help. They thought they would help them. They thought that they would discourage the North, talk them into kind of dropping out of this war. England and France bought a lot of cotton from the South. And so the belief was they'd be sympathetic toward the Southern cause. Thirdly, they want to capture Washington, D.C. Just to show you here, here's Washington, D.C. Here's Richmond. This is Virginia through here. They're really very close, maybe a couple hundred miles from one another. They want to capture Washington, D.C. And then fourthly, they've got to break that Union blockade. If they're going to have any success, they've got to be able to get supplies from foreign countries and to break that blockade and to get them the stuff that they can't make themselves that are forced to buy elsewhere. So both sides, strengths, weaknesses, both sides have goals in mind that they believe will help them be victorious in this war.